Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I don't
I
know if
can.
my internet connection is stable today.
I can hear you and I can see somebody else also.
Yeah, there is somebody else coming into the sheet. Just a second. Okay. He's heard so much about the talk today that he's very excited, and he knows who's coming on the talk. So he's extremely excited about today's event and doesn't want to let his mother do her job. So we begin today's. Oh, Mohit, I think you might have to take over for this one.
No, I think this is the best thing that can happen,
Yeah.
Mr. Hormis, Mr. Joseph, seems the kids are also going to enjoy this talk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
They're very excited because it's you today, Umachan uncle. Yeah. So,
Oh,
yeah.
much understood.
Yeah. So this is Mohit. Not going to happen. I don't think I'm getting.
No, Aditi, I think, why don't you give the mic to them? Let them say hi to everyone.
Let them say hi. Yeah. Rishi. So, like this, I'm going to have to start.
Hello, Vishy. Hi. Hi, Vishy. Hi.
Hi, hi.
Say hi.
Hi to everyone.
That's done. Sorry about that, everyone. Yeah.
That's the best. Welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are sitting actually in the heart of in Palakkad because I'm getting my back treated at an Ayurveda center. So no limit here to what is entertaining in the backwaters here. They're running about in the paddy fields. So I can imagine what it is like if I was to send them there to you for a while. You would have ample entertainment. Yeah. So I'd like to welcome you all today to the 6th session of All That's Kerala, which is actually a series that has been started by Mohit and Mr. Joseph, where we discuss and we talk about all things that are Kerala, all things that have influenced Kerala and its history and its art and its people, and how a lot of Keralites have left their mark on the world today, and what that means for us today in Kerala. So today we have with us Mr. Hormis Tharakan, who is who has a very long and distinguished career in the police force. I'm going to begin by asking you if you will ever believe that such a man could look like a policeman. And if you were to look at him, you can't think that he's a farmer either. And yet that's what he is today. A member of India's prestigious Indian Police Service, or IPS as it's known, from the 1968 batch, he belonged to the Kerala cadre. He had an illustrious career in the IPS and was the Director General of Police Kerala, and was then picked up by Prime Minister Manmohan Singh to head RAW. He finally retired in 2007, and since then, if you can believe it, he's been a farmer. From a policeman to a farmer. After retirement, he built a nice house in Taikatasheri, once an island, and now a small village that nestles among the backwaters about 40 kilometers south of Cochin. He is today what he has always been and what we all know him for, a gentleman, more than anything else, but also a farmer. Welcome, sir, to this program, All That's Kerala. Today's episode is titled A Chat Along the Backwaters. And it's about the backwaters that we'll be talking today. Over to you, Mr. Joseph.
Thank you so much, Aditi. What you said is so true. You can really never believe that somebody like Dr. Hormis Tharakan could be a policeman. Even when he wears a uniform, it's like you still wouldn't believe that he is a policeman, and you can certainly not believe that he's a farmer. But that's what he is. And I think it's a privilege for me to have a conversation with him on the 6th episode of All That's Kerala, Chat Along the Backwaters. And we're going to talk today, chat today actually, or about living on the edge of the backwaters. Dr. Tharakan was, as you know, not only the chief of the police in Kerala, he was DGP Kerala, but then, as you said, Aditi, he was picked up by Manmohan Singh personally and was chief of the intelligence service, the research and analysis wing. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about living on the edge, though, but living on the edge of the backwaters. And so it's a pleasure for me, sir, to welcome you to the 6th episode of All That's Kerala Chat Along the Backwaters. You have introduced him so well, so I'm not going into further introductions with him. He is, as you said, a gentleman and a farmer, Atiti. It's great to have you, sir, on the show with us. Let me start off by asking you, how is it to live along the backwaters? Even though this show is called A Chat Along the Backwaters, this is the first time we have had somebody who's actually living on the side of the backwaters. We've talked, and this is the first time we are talking about the backwaters. So how is it for you as a former IPS officer who has spent most of his time in cities, in air-conditioned buildings? How is it for you to wake up every day to the sound of waters lapping along the shores of those backwaters, along the boundaries of your house compound? How is it? What is the feel to that? It must be quite a peaceful place there. Is it too peaceful? Does it become boring and jarring occasionally, sir?
Well, first of all, I think I must thank you for having me on this show. I've been watching the previous editions, of which came through quite well and quite impressively. And therefore, it is it is an honor to be chatting with you and to have you as an interlocutor, former colleagues, and that makes it even better. I would also like to compliment the City Book Class, Mohit in particular, and the Kerala Museum for helping to get this concept go online. And it is inspiring and motivating to know that there are myriad kindred spirits out there partaking of this conversation virtually as we talk. I would like all the listeners to know that I'm honored to have them as my interlocutors too. Yes, it is true, Mr. Joseph. How do I address you? Moderator, administrator?
Call me just Joseph.
Or comrade?
No, please. This gamcha is something that there's nothing to do with being comrade. I mean, this is a gamcha, as they call it in the north in Delhi, and was given to me by Mohit when I attended one of his programs in Delhi.
Okay. Anyway, well, it is true that I've spent most of my working life in towns, cities, and metros. However, I was born in and grew up in a village called Olawai, which is in the Saikadisheri Panchayat of Chartala, Alappuzha district. Olawai is almost an island covered on 3 sides by the Kaithapura Kyle, which is actually a branch of the Vembanad, and its inlets, and by a vast paddy field on the eastern side, through which we had a lifeline, which we called the Palangivaramba, to the mainland, which in our case was again another island, the Pallipuram Island, which is the largest in the Vembanad Lake, which is the largest island in the Vembanad Lake. For you to have a better idea of the lie of the land, I shall show you a sketch of the Cochin estuary. My technological competence is poor. The method I've chosen for sharing the pictures with you may not be the best, but I hope you'll bear with me, and I hope you will be able to see this properly. I'll go off the screen for a moment and point this at the
Oh, wow. Yes, we can see it.
this is the Cochin estuary. I don't know whether you can see it
We
properly.
can see it. We can see it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So this is where you enter the Cochin port, and then you come down, and then here is the red and Adur, which you know, and the blue is where our Pallipuram Island starts. The Arukuti, and then as you come down, you have Panavalli, then Taikatisheri here. That is where I live. If you go further down, you reach Tanirmukam, the Bund, which leads you to Kumarakam. And then, of course, at this end is the end of the island, and then you connect to Cherthala. So that is where I am. So the entire lie of the backwaters in this area is shown here, even up to Varapura, your place, Joseph. We can see it out here, up here. So there's a very interesting estuary map, which I thought would be useful to place things in perspective. Now, I'll come back to the thing.
We can, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Pallipuram Island was cut off from the rest of Kerala by water until 1946, when the Vailar uprising took place. On its fringes, actually, Vailar is just beyond Pallipuram Island. And then when the uprising took place, Mr. C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer was in the Diwan. Sir C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer had a bridge built at the southern end of the island, connecting it to Charthala to facilitate military movements. So that's how we got our first connectivity with the mainland. Many years later, in 1990s, Mr. A.K. Antony, who was our MLA for long, took the lead in building another bridge at the northern end of the island, at Arukuti, bringing it much closer to Cochin City. So now it's very easy for us to get to Cochin City. We're only 25 to 30 kilometers from city center, actually, by road. So that is a major change for us, and a lot of people from here go daily to Cochin to work. And that has also contributed to the problems of farming and agriculture in this area. But generally, it has been a very progressive step, for which we are grateful to Mr. Antony. But at the same time, I don't want to forget the contributions of other people's representatives of various parties, like Mr. Vailar Ravi, who was also from the Congress, Srimati K.R. Gavariyamma, and several others like Mr. Sudanandan of the CPI, etc. Actually, our area is full of, because of Vailar, a number of leftist leaders have come up from our place who have reached high places in the political life of Kerala. They have all significantly contributed to the development of our region. Just a few years back, another bridge connecting Taikatisheri to Torovo toward the highway was again built. I think Mr. Antony took a lot of interest in that, but it was completed during the subsequent government's time. And yet another bridge connecting Taikatisheri to the Vaikam side is on the anvil. And once it is completed, our place will actually be a transport hub Meanwhile, other things have also happened, like in Pallipuram, the industrial food processing development plant has come, and IT park has come. So things are changing really in this area. So our isolation is close to an end. But I grew up as an islander in a proper insular environment. Went to local schools until I left for Royal College, Madras, where you also studied.
That's true.
At the age of 16 to do my pre-university. Till then, I went to school on foot and on part of the way in boat, learned to swim and go like any other islander, and watched the farming activities going on around me. And it was more than 5 decades later that I returned to live here permanently, and I have always wanted to return here. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you so much. It answers it very well. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Okay, right. I think I just come back there. Can you see me now?
Not yet.
Okay, well, I've got a slight problem. I think I will rectify that.
But I can hear you, so why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I'll go ahead. So thank you so much. I think so. You always had a village life. Now, how did you, after retirement, how did you decide to become a farmer? So then, what are the crops you grow? Everybody says farming is backbreaking. That it's almost a loss-making enterprise, at least in Kerala today. How successful have they been to you? In your case, do you actually work in the fields? Do you wear a lungi, half-mast, go and hoe the field? Do you do that?
I wear a lungi and go to the fields, but I don't get into the water at the age of. Right. It's a bit risky to get into the water, but I do, as well as paddy. Look, I do paddy and prawns. This is part of the government's scheme of Udinellam Uduminum, which is actually supported by the government of India to NABARD and its local implementing agencies, ADAC, the Agricultural Development Agency of Kerala. It is very interesting, actually. One of the reasons I got into it is that I realized that this is part of the climate change, the fight against global climate change. As part of the Paris Protocol, etc., Kyoto Protocol and Paris Agreement, etc., a fund has been created to which developed countries contribute a substantial amount. And that fund has to be utilized for promoting projects which are helpful to fighting climate change. So until 2016, when I launched this project, 2015, the government of India had been able to locate just 3 projects which fitted that description, and one of which was Kerala government's Udinellam Uduminum. Substantial subsidies. Actually, very often people criticize governments for not doing enough for agriculture, but in this case, this is a remarkable scheme. Of course, the money had to be spent in any case, which was coming from the developed countries, and it had to be spent for the purpose for it. It was spelled out. And this Udinellam Uduminum project, under which you did paddy, not just paddy, but paddy of a particular kind of traditional variety, and in an organic manner. And I do what is called Chettivirippa, which is a traditional thing. What my father used to cultivate. The same thing I've been able to revive thanks to after so many years. And it seems that I'm one of the few successful farmers doing that in Kerala today. I'm saying this judging by the demand I have for the seeds every year, at least so far. I have a lot of demand. People come and buy it off as soon as I have my harvest. This year, my wife and I decided that part of the harvest field set apart for dehusking as brown rice. Are you telling me something? Is there any problem?
No, no, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
I've got a couple of questions, so I thought I'll ask
So,
you that.
So we dehusked part of the paddy into brown rice. And that again, of course, that one thing, the paddy that I grow is expensive to buy in market, but there are buyers. But when it is, you dehusk it and try to market it as rice, it's even more expensive. So that I've just marketed and I'm trying to see how the market responds. And then depending on that, I will decide next year whether to do paddy, stick to paddy itself, which goes as seed, which cultivators come and buy from me. But what's interesting is that once the paddy season is over, what I do is our fields are known as the Pakali fields. Pakali is a type of paddy cultivation which has a GI tag, and they're done only in 3 districts here in the Travancore Cochin side, that is Thrissur, Ernakulam and Alappuzha, and Kannur in where it is known by some another name. So that's the method that I follow. The advantage with this is that, the Pakali which I grow is a tall, Pakali itself, the name in Malayalam indicates it's a tall variety of paddy. So even if there's high levels of water, it can survive. It can also survive in a certain degree of salinity. So that is the advantage of Pakali. And then once the harvest season is over and when the water becomes fresh, when the rainy season starts, the water becomes saline after the rainy season, then we go in for tiger prawns. Tiger prawns again grows in saline water. And the leftovers of the paddy is good, feed for the prawns, and therefore it's a cycle which works very well. I'm yet to perfect it, but I think now I know at the age of 75 I managed to learn the basic tricks, so I think I'll be able to improve upon it as time goes by.
It's great to know then that yours is not a loss-making farming, because many people do say that farming, especially paddy farming, is loss-making. But that's one point. I remember coming to Thaikatisheri about 10, 15 years ago. At that time, the bridges that you spoke about earlier were not there. I had to come in a ferry. The car was in a ferry, and I loved the place. It was beautiful. I think I stayed there for 2 nights. And it was a wonderful experience. But then we've got a couple of questions. One is actually a statement. This is from Niranjan Pant. He's my batchmate. He's speaking in from Delhi, and he says, "Please give my compliments to Mr. Hormis Tharakan. I have the pleasure of visiting his lovely house some 4 years ago with my late wife. He and Mrs. Tharakan were most gracious hosts." And that brings me to the point. The next time the tiger prawns are ready, I think I'll come and visit your house one more time. But more seriously, there are a couple of questions from Rajagiri Media. One of the questions is, we don't seem to have a well-developed system of waterways to connect the backwaters to the mainland. Why is there no importance given to waterways? And also whether you think the farm bills, how the farm bills will affect Kerala, and especially the Kerala farmer. These are 2 questions, but meanwhile, I noticed that Admiral Muralidharan is also here, has joined us. Welcome, Mr. Muralidharan. If you can answer these 2 questions, sir, first, or respond to them, or whatever you would.
Happy to hear from Mr. Niranjan Pant, but I'm very sorry to hear about, if I heard it correctly,
his wife died 2 years ago.
We had a very enjoyable time when they came here and stayed at our family house, which is a homestay, and we had a very enjoyable time. So please give my regards. About the question of the waterways not being connected to the mainland, I didn't quite get that.
I think what the questioner is trying to ask is, why are there no transportation along the backwaters? The boat services that we once had, they seem
Yeah.
to have disappeared, and the newer boats have not come in.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Actually, when we were young, the same place where I built my house now, which is a little distance from a family home, about 500 meters, but mine is closer to the backwaters. Here we used to come in the evening for, getting the breeze and watch the traffic go by. It was a highway-like thing at the time. A lot of commercial traffic from Cochin to Alleppey used to take place along the waterway in front of us. These so-called Kattuvalams, which have all been now converted into, houseboats, used to be cargo boats. And they used to use sails. And in the afternoon, there used to be a very nice breeze, which, took them pretty fast. And sometimes, of course, they also used to be tugs used to tug them too. But there's a lot of traffic. But that is completely stopped. We are now moved over to trucks and things like that. But I'm told that the Chief Minister, along with our friend Vijay Kurian, has a very interesting scheme to revive these waterways from all the way from one end of Kerala to the other. If that comes through, it'll be a great thing indeed. Of course, the national waterway is already there, but I don't know whether the planned development of those waterways has actually happened. I don't see any evidence of that in my area. Yeah, please.
No, speaking of waterways, I'm interrupting, but I remember as an 8 or 9-year-old, when I came from a holiday from Madras where I was studying, there was this boat trip from Vadapada to Ernakulam, which my father took me on. It was such a memorable trip. That's vanished now. And as you were perhaps saying, the new ones have not taken over. The other question, yeah, sorry, go ahead, please.
No, as part of the Cochin Muziris Biennale, as you know, I was connected with that. I was encouraging them to promote a boat ride from Fort Cochin all the way to Muziris. It would be a fantastic thing. But I think a few rides were organized, but I don't think it's a regular thing. But right. If it becomes regular, I'm sure it'll be a great tourist attraction once we get over the COVID problems. Yes, sir.
Let me move on. I believe that this your name, Dr. Hormis Tharakan. Tharakan is a title. Your families were local rulers many years before independence. So how did this title Tharakan? How did your family come to get it? Who bestowed this title? How long has this title been? Of course, titles have been abolished since independence. But you were traditional magistrates and local chiefs, weren't you? How does that play out?
Well, actually, my brother, Professor Emeritus, 85 years old now based in Belgium, has done years of research into our family history, along with my brother Michael Tharakan, who's also chairman of the Kerala Council for Historical Studies. They've done a lot of research, and my brother's book called The Profiles of R.I. Tharakans has been published by Bloomsbury and has gone into 2 editions. So he's done a lot of very backbreaking research going through the old olas which are there in our Tharawats. And a very interesting history has come out of that, although the entire effort to decipher the olas has not succeeded yet. But the folklore is that we came from the north of Kerala, from a place called Paruvil near Thrissur, following the invasion of Tipu Sultan, and settled here in Tekadisheri in the relative security of an island, I suppose. That gave them a sense of security of being, and as it turned out to be correct, because Tipu was, had to go back from Alua ultimately. In fact, actually, maybe later if we have time, I would like to mention the role of some of the people from our area who played a significant role in defeating Tipu. Vaikum, Padmanabha Pilla, etc. Anyway, that brought us here. And then we seem to have, done fairly well, going into the reputation of our family is as farmers, mainly growing paddy and coconuts. The coconut trees, vast coconut estates we are supposed to have had. So I think as a result, we were given this title, which was actually given to many Syrian Christian families, prominent Syrian Christian families in the time of the Maharajas, both in Cochin and in Travancore. So we are now trying to find out who exactly. We've not been able to find the document by which the title was given to our forefathers. But one of the orders which has not been deciphered, which is in Koleritha, says J.A. in English. In those days, or all the other things in Malayalam, in the Koleritha and Vateritha and all. So that made make us wonder whether it was JM, sorry. JM stands for John Munro. Colonel Munro was not only resident, but also Diwan of Travancore in the early 19th century, and whether it was he who gave us that title. We're trying to decipher the Koleritha, so let's see how that works out.
Thank you. There is Ramu Damodaran has joined in from New York. Ramu Damodaran is my batchmate from the Indian Foreign Service. He has been with the UN for many years. So he's sent in a question to you, but he starts off by saying, it's wonderful to see you, MP, and Mr. Tharakan's gentle, articulate self. He's saying, I wonder if he could reflect on his time in Rome, the UN food capital, including that of this year's Nobel Peace Prize winner, and reflect from his present experience if there is really room for global action and policy when it comes to farming. Would you be able to respond to that, Dr. Tharakan?
Very nice to hear from Ramu, and please convey my regards to him. Yes, I was happy to hear that the WFP won the Nobel Prize this year.
Right.
During my time in Rome, I had a number of friends from FAO and WFP who were from India. And most memorably, Dr. Varghese. I think, he was a delightful personality. He was a typical Malayali, and he would talk to you in Malayalam and English and Italian, everything in Malayalam, total Malayalam accent, and immensely popular in Rome. He was actually the nephew of Mr. T.V. Thomas. And he has written this authoritative book on the land reforms in Kerala, along with under the guidance of Dr. K.N. Raj. So I remember him very fondly, no more. Yes, as far as global food policy is concerned, actually, I'm not competent to comment because my farming experience is confined to the practices which exist in my village and surrounding areas, which are in fact different from the practices which exist in other parts of Kerala. For instance, now in Kutanad, a certain degree of mechanization is possible. Harvesting is entirely mechanized. So I was quite jealous to watch them, doing that. The harvesting and threshing and everything is done in a matter of hours. Whereas here in the water, I am not aware of any, machine which can do harvesting in the kind of water levels that we have. So there are many problems of agriculture which are specific to areas, different areas. So as far as global food policy is concerned, I'm not really competent to comment on that. But if thought can be given to, specific problems which exist in different areas, and if we can look into research on like mechanization and things like that. But as far as labor is concerned, it's an interesting phenomenon. When I came back here, I found that in the field, for harvesting and for transplanting, etc., we need women laborers. There's no problem getting them. In spite of Manrega, of course, you have to offer matching wages, and if not more, which I don't think is a problem at all. And then you get enough of them, but all of them above a certain age. You don't get young persons anymore to work in the field. But now that COVID has, created problems for people who wish to go to Cochin to work, many youngsters, many male members of the younger generation are coming forward to join me in farming work. And so that's a very interesting thing that's happening. But ultimately, when the pandemic problem is over, they'll all go back to their work. So I suppose when this generation goes away, the real solution is to go in for mechanization, and for that we need help. That's right. Yeah.
Speaking of Rome, Kerala has had a long tradition of trade ties with Rome, 500 years ago. So did you see a slice of Kerala in Rome, apart from the gentleman you're talking about? And do you see a slice of Rome in Kerala? Especially talking about the Museries and things.
Very much so. I think the Catholic Church is a large number of personnel, priests and nuns over there. So I think the place is full of Malayalis, and then they're all. I think as far as the embassy is concerned, they're a big help also, in the community functioning, reaching out to the Indian community and all that. So it is, yes, it is a huge Kerala community over there. Actually, when I reached there and one of those Indian community functions, I found that I needed no introduction whatsoever. Yeah.
Speaking of Thaikadesheri and its beautiful backwaters, there must be tremendous potential for tourism in Thaikadesheri. You think such village tourism can be promoted? Do you think that it will destroy the environment on the other hand, if there's too much of tourists? And you also stayed for some long time, or you are associated with Sri Lanka. Do you think a state like Kerala can really compete with Sri Lanka in terms of tourism? So what about the tourism aspects of a place like Thaikadesheri, of the backwaters?
Well, I must tell you that my younger brother, Jacob, who was a banker in the UK, came back much earlier than I did in 2002 or 2003. And that happened when after our partition, our family Tarwad house went to him. So he gave up the job and came back, and then started. He was the one who actually kicked off regenerated farming activities in the village. And he still remembered. He passed away in 2014. He remembered very fondly by the villagers. So he converted our Tarwad house into a homestay way back in 2003. And it is, I think, one of the well-known homestays internationally, at least as far as Kerala is concerned. Mr. Pant has come and stayed there. And we have a number of distinguished guests like him from all over the world. So they all, you see the messages that they've left, it's amazing. It's two of my brothers, Jacob and Anthony, together. Anthony incidentally was in the CRPF and with the Special Protection Group of Rajiv Gandhi. And after retirement, at an early retirement, he came back. And then he also joined my other brother in building up tourism in the village. And now I would say that Olavai is on the global tourism map. But another significant thing happened recently. A young girl called Manisha Panikar, daughter of Vasudeva Panikar, who was a prominent young Congress leader in the 80s. He was an AICC General Secretary, but passed away at a very young age. So contemporary of Mr. A. K. Antony and Mr. Vailas Ravi, he would have been a cabinet minister, I think, if he had lived. Manisha went to the US and then came back and then started a 4-room small place in a village called Kakatur, which also close by here to my village, to Pekatshiri, where again we have properties. So we have a very long relationship with Kakatur. Manisha started this 4-room place called Kyle Resort and did a great deal to promote tourism, in the sense that one of the fantastic things that she did was to get the editorial team of National Geographic to come and stay there. And then they wrote a piece in which they rated Kakatur among the 20 must-see places in the world, especially on account of the sunset colors. After they wrote that, I also started watching the sunsets from here. Kakatur is 1 kilometer from my house. And then only I realized this amazing pictures of, every day there are different colors which appear on the sky at the time of sunset. Anyway, because of National Geographic, Kakatur has become very famous now. So I think there is a great deal of scope for promoting tourism in these areas. In between, we had a few movies being shot in our village. Amen was shot in our village. That made our place rather famous. So I think there is a great deal. But when you talk about tourism, you have to be careful about the kind of tourism that you are trying to promote. All sorts of constructions that all come up in the name of tourism, which doesn't really help tourism of the kind that we need to have.
Right. There's another very interesting question that's come from Roy in Dallas, I think. He says with the prediction of rising sea levels, what would be the impact of rising sea levels on people living in low-lying areas like yours? Like, what will happen to the backwaters?
Well, I know that there are many studies which paint a very alarming picture. But as a person living on the shores, on the banks of the backwaters, I must say something which I actually wanted to highlight on my own. The fact that backwaters have a very strong backbone. And I think they proved it during the floods of 2018. I live so close to the backwaters. But I think the backwaters bore the brunt of the floods without any problem. There are many people living much closer to the backwater. In spite of the odds that, doesn't apply to people who have been traditionally staying by the thing. And there are many people like that in our village, but they manage, of course, at the height of the floods during daytime, they move to the school where free lunch and all were provided. But in the evening, they came back home, and so because water never entered their house. So I think experts need to study this phenomenon of the backwaters once again. We have had a lot of problems from the point of view of legal issues and things like that, which has had an great impact on social impact on India, in Kerala in particular. I think there's a very great need to study the impact of the 2018 floods in particular on backwaters and areas close to the backwaters. My impression is that apart from those areas where the rivers come and join the backwaters, there's not been any major damage, and including some small backwater islands which were at the center of the judicial battle on this environmental issue. They have survived absolutely. Not a drop of water entered one particular, because of various reasons. I'm not mentioning the name of the island. That particular island, which is the center of the storm, not a drop of water entered. And actually, we could have taken refugees from other places and put them up there. So
that's very interesting. Is it because the traditional waterways have not been hampered and they're left open, so the water that the rains bring in is carried away to the sea? Could that be the reason?
Exactly, the backwaters carry water to the sea, whereas rivers are narrow, and therefore, when the dams are open and all that, But once it reaches, like you can see the backwaters at Tanirmukam, near Padaramanam. It's like a sea, we can absorb so much of water. The capacity of the backwater, I'm not a scientist, so I can't say all this, but as a person living here, my feeling is that backwaters have immense capacity to absorb, water, and that is what nature has meant them to be.
Indeed. Well, that's very interesting. That's very interesting to hear. I'm moving on because there are a few questions which have come in, and I think I must read out at least a few of them. There is Abraham Tharakan saying that after hearing you, you're an inspiration and a guide to him, and he's planning to follow your footsteps to try a hand at training. And then there's MD Varghese who asked a question. He's from the Cochin shipyard. He's CJM there. He wants to know whether we can engage Mandraga workers for private cultivation. I wonder whether you would be able to give a quick reply to that.
I need to check the legal position in this, but I think I know that certain kinds of private work, like clearing of, bushes near fences, near roads and all that, even if it is private property, it is permitted, the thing. But I think you'll have to check with the officers who are in charge of the MNREGA program. But the thing is that you can get MNREGA workers, provided you offer them better wages than what the government offers. What prevents you from doing that?
But not under MNREGA, that's the point.
Pardon?
Not under the scheme, no.
This
you'll have to check up, yes, absolutely. Let me move on. There is D. Shantakumar, who is the chief of AIPC in Trichur. He wants to know whether there's a lot of underemployment in the farming sector and there's a need to displace farm labor to other sectors. Is that a possibility? Hello.
The question is whether there's underemployment in the farming sector.
Yes,
is that right?
Yes.
Underemployment meaning that
he says, for example, that 50% of our labor force in agriculture, but it contributes only 17% to the GDP. So is there a need to move? Is there not a need to move out from the agriculture sector to other sectors?
Well, I can only talk about my experience in my village. I certainly don't think there's underemployment at this particular moment. I think there are, such a lot of things to do. And I think, of course, the productivity of the agricultural laborer may not be, because like I told you, all of them are above a certain age. Youngsters are not there anymore. So their productivity may be limited. But then, and then of course, the question of GDP again, I think we need to look at it. Is it because the contribution of the farming sector is less because the farming sector is not getting the kind of prices that they should be getting? That is also another question that we should be asking. But at the moment, I think, at least in Kerala, like in our village, almost everyone from the village youngsters have moved out to Cochin to find out some work, at least in the construction sector. We can absorb everyone.
Thank you for that. You were the DIG of the Central Zone long ago when I had the fortune of working with you or working as a part of your team, as the district collector of Ernakulam and the mayor of Cochin. That was a time when, for the first and perhaps the last time, the Pope came to Kerala. Pope John Paul II, he is now Saint John Paul II. He stayed for 2 or 3 days here. What are your memories of that papal visit? Do you have anything special that you would like to quickly relate to us?
Yeah, I remember it was a great occasion for all of us. We worked together to make that a success. And I think it went off very smoothly. There were four functions which the Pope attended in Kerala. 3 of them were in my jurisdiction. One in Cochin, one in Thrissur, one in Kottayam. Kottayam, where the canonization of Sister Alfonso took place. All were massive crowds, but then I suppose, we were lucky that everything went smoothly. And then I think we, especially about Cochin, since we are also involved in that in a very major way, I think the choice of the place was brilliant in the sense that the location that I think you played a major role in locating the place. And then that made much very easy for us to make sure that the traffic through the city went on uninterrupted, even while the Pope was addressing such a huge crowd in Kakinad. There were many people, including my eldest brother, rang up and commented on it. He said, "How did you make sure that the traffic went so smoothly while while the Pope was addressing there?" So many, I think good to think about those days. And like I was telling my wife, I think we know 2 saints now. One is the Pope and the other is Mother Teresa, both of whom you had occasion to meet.
That's true. Thank you. Thank you so much. Before I continue, I'll conclude very quickly because we are reaching the top of the hour. But before that, let me just announce that the next episode which is the 7th, lucky number 7 of the episode All That's Kerala, would be on Raja Ravi Varma. It will be titled Raja Ravi Varma, a Raja among painters. And we have 2 very important people who have been running a foundation called the Raja Ravi Varma Foundation, Ms. Geethanjali Maini and Ms. Rukmani Varma, who will be talking to us. For the first time, we have 2 women on our show. And for the first time, we have 2 people instead of 1, 2 guests instead of 1 on the show. And by the way, Mrs. Rukmani Varma is the great-great-granddaughter. I don't know whether I missed one more great. She's the great-great-granddaughter of Raja Ravi Varma himself. So we're going to speak on that. I just thought I'll announce it as part of this. I'll try to wind up very quickly. I remember that I must read that out. There's a slightly long note from Riaz Como. Riaz Como is one of the co-founders of the Cochin Biennale. So I must read that out. And you've been associated with the Cochin Biennale and also with the Kerala Museum. You have been associated with both. And his it's more than a question, it's a comment. He says, "Dear respected sir, whenever I have observed your many conversations on many occasions, I've always felt that you're great at making peace in sites of conflict. I noticed that you reflect a lot on Gandhi and his message through your actions as a way of living in today's India. Here you are again today becoming emblematic and inspiring a reputed civil servant, very politely and inspiring as a civil servant, and very politely advising a society what should be our attitude towards nature and how to live in harmony as humans by celebrating the village and its indigeneity through farming and connecting with the earth and the locals." I think Riaz has an artist in him, has a writer in him, has a speaker in him, and I think he expresses that well. I completely add to what I underline what he says. One of my last few questions, one would be, I know when I visited that village, there used to be a small little church, which was a family church. I know of Hindu temples, which belongs to family temples of Hindus. That's very common. But the Catholic Church never allows a family church, but yet you had a family church there. Is it still there, and is it still a family church?
Yes, actually, it's a very interesting story about that church. Um, it is. It was a family church. I can't say that it's a church, a family church anymore, because it is now a parish. In the Catholic Church, we belong to the Syro Malabar, Catholic Church. Under the canon law of that church, there's something called oratory. Oratory is a church which is not a parish church, but now it is a parish church, so it's not an oratory anymore. The oratory is a private chapel, which is built by a family, or it can even be by a society of priests or whatever. This is we don't have the exact date, but we assume that it's 1870, and in fact the church was planning to celebrate its 150th anniversary this year, but because of COVID, they have not been able to do that. But as usual, along with that, they're also going to build a new church. Luckily, they're not pulling down the original church, which I have a sketch of that. Once again, do you have time, or should I?
Yeah, definitely. And then there is a question by Admiral Muralidharan, and then I'll go in for the last question. My last question, and wind it
I'll
up.
just show you the picture of that.
Right, please do.
Can you see the picture of the church?
Not
No.
really, no.
Okay, I think that's a problem. I need to.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, this is sketch of the
Right.
church.
It's coming at a 90-degree wrong angle, but still one can see that. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, that is built in 1870 by my great grandfather. That's right. Yes. So it becomes a private church because church was not only built, but an 8-acre property, a coconut garden near Vaikam called Manapalli Tiruthu was also given to the church, with the proviso that Mass will be said there every day throughout the year in memory of our forefathers. So that is, and then the income from the property was to be used for the church, and also for a priest to stay there and say Mass and do other services. So that is how that is a special arrangement, which I must say over the years have now changed in the sense that it has now become a parish. Of course, we had a bit of a discussion about that. We have now allowed the church to requested them to make sure that the daily remembrance Mass is said. I hope that is being done. But otherwise, now it's entirely under the control of the church. And then
Before I come to my last question, I'll take this question from Admiral Muralidharan. He says, when you came back to the village after many years, how did you find the impact of the plastics and other commercial waste impacting environment? And again, he asked, do you think a movement like Dr. Kurian did for milk could be done for small farmers?
Oh yeah, the plastic is a big problem. Actually, my wife has been very concerned about it, and then we've tried various things in trying to motivate youngsters around. It is. Finally, the panchayat got into the act. Actually, the government has been trying to do something, and I think they did a contract with a company to come and collect. I mean, the panchayat employed. I think it was the Somsa Isaac scheme of employing paid people to go around and collect initially the sorting out of plastics for which the containers were given. Then people were sent to collect it, and all that worked for a few months. But now they're not turning up at all. So when I inquired, I was told that the company which is supposed to lift it has not done it for several months. Therefore, there's no place where they can keep all this stuff. So that entire system has broken down. But I was wondering now, because everybody's busy with COVID. Otherwise, it seemed to me that maybe we can speak to some of our former colleagues who are still in service and see that this problem is solved. It doesn't seem to be an insurmountable problem. If we have a company which is willing to lift the stuff, and if they have a problem, we can find out what it is. And in fact, separately, I'm in touch with people who are into this business and who are willing to come and, they need plastic because they're into recycling. But then I was going into all that, then all this COVID thing, and then I found that everybody was busy with things. So that is now gone down. But the plastic ban, I think, has helped a great deal. Otherwise, living near the backwaters, the one problem has been the stuff which would float down from Cochin onwards, maybe even beyond. That is a major problem. But the plastic content in the waters have gone down considerably of late. And that is a great thing. I think probably, apart from the fact that COVID has cut down on partying and etc. But I think the government's plastic ban has also helped. So I think things can be done. If all of us try together.
We'll have a separate conversation later on the Kerala History Museum, but you've been associated with the museum. How do you think all these issues about the past history of a small place like Taikadesheri can be sort of projected as part of Kerala's history with a museum like this?
Yes, I'm very excited about what Aditi is trying to do with Kerala Museum, particularly so because I had the good fortune of knowing her ancestor, Mr. Masavan Nair, who set up the museum. He was a person about whom Kerala must know more. What he has done for Cochin in particular is amazing. So I'll be very happy to do whatever I can to help Aditi take it forward. Because my one idea which I shared with Aditi and also with you is to have something like a Kerala India International Center in Cochin, which can be centered around the museum, which is already doing similar work. So that, of course, we can think about that as we go along. But yes, I think there's a great need to research on our past. Actually, while preparing for this speech, I found out so much about my area, which is actually, I mentioned Pallipuram, but Pallipuram along with Cherthala is known as Karapuram. And Karapuram is, on the borders of Trivandrum and Cochin, so it kept changing hands. And a lot of important battles between Cochin and Travancore took place here. Recently, I was amazed to find that people in a nearby village called Panavali speak a coded language called Moolabhadram, which was developed at the time of those wars to make sure that the communication between people in the border areas did not get to the other side. People still speak that language called Moolabhadram. Amazing.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I think I'm short of time, so I'll have to conclude with my last question. If your son or any other young man or a woman were to ask you if he or she should choose between the civil service and farming, what would your advice be?
Actually, I have two sons. I never force them to join the civil service or anything, and both of them are in their own professions. But I do encourage them to come back and do farming. Maybe not now, but in due course. Once, and they're both very fond of this place, and I won't be surprised if ultimately they decide to come back. There's so much to do. So much to do. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and then the delight, not only talking with all of you, but some old friends like Ramu Damodaran, etc., who got in touch from far away. So it's been a real pleasure indeed.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you.
Hormis Tharakan. It's been a pleasure talking to you, understanding village life, understanding Taikatesheri, and a host of other things. Understanding farming, understanding agriculture, understanding environment. So many things, and your take that nothing happened during the Kerala floods, in spite of our fear of water levels rising. Thank you so much. I'll hand over the floor to Aditi or Mohit for winding up this.
I'm the chosen one today to say a vote of thanks. Thank you, Mr. Tharakan. Thank you, Mr. Joseph, for hosting this session. And I wanted to say a special thank you to Mr. Tharakan for bringing us, Mr. Joseph and Mohit also together. It was thanks to you and our initial discussions about what talks and discussions we can have at the museum that this series even came up. And I'm glad that we finally got you on our sixth session once it's taken off so well on such an interesting talk, because a lot of this backwater area and the fact that it's all made up of estuaries, I don't think that's known to so many children, so many adults. We haven't actually looked at this map in great detail, and especially today, where the focus is all on, where can you go from here, and not really to look back at Kerala and the way the land lies. So it's been very interesting. I have had the opportunity to try that very tasty rice. And both the rice and the prawns makes us all water. Mouth water for home and for Kerala. I'm sure that people who are all over the world are wishing they were back home and having rice and prawns. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been very enlightening. Thank you all to all the participants as well for joining in today's discussion. Don't forget to join us on the 31st of October when we're having this talk with Gitanjali Maini, who heads the Raja Ravi Varma Heritage Foundation, and Rukmini Varma, who is great granddaughter. So one great was missing of Raja Ravi Varma. So it'll be very interesting. Please join us.
Thank you all I enjoyed talking to you all, and I hope you enjoyed listening to me too. Thanks.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.